One of the worst things that when I was doing assessments and pen tests is I'd come back a year later and find that they hadn't fixed like half the things that I'd found. It's kind of like depressing as a security person.
So you might as well not have done the pen test.
That's one of the
Yeah.
nice things that John's kind of made us start doing now when we get the reports and the client wants to do mitigation efforts. What we do is we ask the client, so how did you mitigate it?
My standard advice generally is, share as little as necessary. Kind of like taking the least privilege approach, but like for reports.
We have clients that will come to us, and sometimes they'll be an informational or a low finding. They'll come and ask questions, hey, we plugged this up or whatever. Do they really need a retest at that point?
The concept of a pen test report is if it doesn't lead to a penetration, it doesn't go in the report. But the clients that we deal with, they are smaller. They don't have dedicated IT support or dedicated IT team.
But still, it doesn't mean that a high-end pen tester is going to be higher quality. And it doesn't mean that a low-end pen tester is going to be low quality, right? So we have to be careful about some of our biases as well.
Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Ayman Elsawah. Ayman has been a fractional CISO for 6 years now and has helped startups through various stages in their growth, including some household names like Masterclass, Casper, and Justworks. He is the creator of Getting Into InfoSec podcast, author of The Breaking In, a practical guide to starting a career in information security, and has a newsletter called Last Week's as a vCISO with over 100 articles with guides and reflections on security industry. He also coaches CISOs, helping them transition to becoming a fractional CISO. Ayman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ayman, one of the things that's come up with John and I is a vCISO versus a fractional CISO. What are the differences?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Reese. So the idea is essentially they're both the same, but what you have is, unfortunately, over the years, people have kind of abused the term vCISO. And so it's come to mean a bunch of different things. And so I like to say fractional CISO. Sometimes it's just marketing. Sometimes also defining what your role is. Because when you're a fractional executive, you sometimes have full accountability. You're full all in and managing everything, or you're just dealing with just a part of the say security program in this case. So and that's I've worked in all different capacities where I'm managing the complete security program, but also maybe just managing a small part. Maybe it's just the compliance portion or the architecture portion. Um, and as a CISO, you have to do all these different things, right? So I'm just doing it part time, and I think fractional CISO resonates more with people. They can understand it more. But the term vCISO has been used by MSPs now and different folks. There's no right or wrong, really. It's just how it is. I mean, my newsletter is called vCISO, but I did start it many years ago. But I do position myself as a fractional CISO because what it is you were bringing in a CISO, someone with security leadership experience, but you only need them on a part-time basis.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you would think that a small, medium-sized business would be perfect for a fractional CISO then.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Well, I'm a little partial. I think everybody should have, security leadership at the stern. Maybe not all in, right? Depending on the size of the company. But yeah, someone should have. I mean, if you're the CEO or CTO, and security is under your umbrella, regardless whether you like it or not. And so you could spend, hours Googling or chat GPTing and trying to find some sort of answer, or you could just ask someone that's had the experience, particularly to your kind of company, and then get an answer right away.
So one of the things that we do at MainNerve, we are a penetration testing company, and that's strictly what we do. So as a fractional CISO, what would you say to the small, medium-sized businesses that are looking for a penetration testing company or a fractional CISO?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, if you're looking for a pen test, when you try to one, you need to understand what all the different kinds of pen tests there are, right? And so for some people, it could be very overwhelming. Do they do a black box, gray box, white box? Do they do a network pen test? Do they do application security pen test, source code review, et cetera, et cetera? Full on red team, social engineering. What are all the different types of pen tests, right? As you, I'm sure, know and you guys do. So that's what I run into when I'm talking to startups and SMBs is what kind of pen test. And a lot of times they're just looking for, maybe their insurance provider asked them to do it, or enterprise client has asked them to do it. And so they're just trying to meet the need. But then there are folks out there that want to uncover all the security issues in their stack and want to have a good authoritative answer on what is happening in their security stack.
All right. So pen test reports can be packed with a lot of technical information. Some of it's useful, a lot of it's overwhelming. What approaches do you have as a fractional CISO to break that information down and help your clients get the most benefit from it?
Yeah, so that's true. I think pen test reports can be overwhelming. Um, and that's the thing when I'm talking to a company and they're looking to get a pen test, I'm like, you understand that when you get the report, there's now you're kind of accountable for fixing all these kind of items. And so I think the mindset, it was just establishing the mindset that like, hey, if I get a bunch of issues, I'm gonna have to run and try to fix it. And the reason for that is because eventually part or the whole report might get shared with your customers and or cyber insurance. And the number one question they're going to ask is, did you fix the highs and the mediums? Right. And so and I'm sure, I mean, I don't know the format of your reports, but I'm guessing you guys have, critical, high, medium, low, and maybe informational. And so a low might not necessarily be something they don't need to remediate, but a combination or a couple of these together could, be a difficult matter, for example. So my advice to them is to, take it, triage it, put it into their ticketing system. If it's a big bug, for example, split it up into a couple different chunks so that you can work away at it. I'm sure your reports have also different workarounds that they could do instead of sometimes they can't fix the actual issue, but if they could put a workaround around it to help reduce the vulnerability, exposure, the attack surface, then that's also a good thing too. So um, my recommendation to my clients is usually just kind of break it up into small pieces, put it on the roadmap. Don't forget about it. Don't just leave it in the backlog, but make sure to fix the highs and mediums sooner than later because someone's going to come around and ask about that, and they might not sign a contract because you have not fixed your highs and mediums. One of the worst things that when I was doing assessments and pen tests is I come back a year later and find that they hadn't fixed like half the things that I found, and it's kind of like depressing as a security person uh, when you come. I'm sure you guys see this all the time. You come in, you're like, but I found all these really bad bugs for you guys. How come you haven't fixed it? And um, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. One of the things that brings us really big joy is that when we go and someone's fixed all the issues that we found, right? So, do you guys have any experiences or
Yeah,
war stories about that?
it's always a pretty big downer for us when we pull the previous report from a year or 2 years ago, depending upon whether this client is a they're hopping through or if they're just coming back to us year after year. And we look at the findings that were there, and then when we go in, the finding is still there. And we're just like, it's heartbreaking when you don't want to have to write the same report in there. But it's a catch 22 because no one likes to perform a pen test where there's no findings whatsoever. Most boring thing in the world, but it's the best thing for the client, right? So when the client gets a report back that says you have been doing your job, you are secure, it's great. It's boring for us, but at the same time, it's also you want to kind of reach through the the Teams call or the Zoom call and shake somebody awake and say, "Do you not realize what you're doing is you're spending the money on this pen test. You're not fixing it. You've not done anything. So yeah, you
Yeah,
did the pen test, but you didn't actually fix anything. So you might as well not have done the pen test."
That's one of the
yeah,
nice things that John's kind of made us start doing now when we get the reports and the client wants to do mitigation efforts. What we do is we ask the client, so how did you mitigate it? That's the first thing John wants to know. I want to know how they mitigated it because I can tell them if it's going to work or not. So it's like, it's really cut down a lot on that as well.
Yeah.
yeah,
You mentioned earlier, you were talking about when you get a report, you're sharing the report back and forth, and who you sharing with it. There have been numerous times where I have a client call me and say, "Hey, is it okay for me to share this report?" And of course, for us, the report is the property of the client, right? So once we give them the report, they can do whatever they want with that report. The issue is should they share the report with whoever it is that's asking for it. So in from your perspective as a fractional CISO, should the situation arise where your client is asking you, is it okay for me to share this report with this organization or that organization? What are the things that you do to determine what parts of the report are okay to share and what parts are not, or whether it's even necessary at all?
Yeah, really good question. So my standard advice generally is, share as little as necessary. Kind of like taking the least privilege approach, but like for reports. So in that sense, first of all, if they're not even a customer, or they haven't signed an NDA, then forget it, right? So everything has to be under NDA. Um, Period, right? And then if they're just like a drive-by potential customer, you'd have to really consider whether you want to share this information or not. Like, are they a small opportunity, or are they a big opportunity? And like, okay, let's try to win some favor with them. You really need to measure it. At that point, um, in general, my advice is typically when you're going to decide to share. So again, we talked about who you're going to share with. Don't share with non NDA folks, and try to limit your sharing with non customers as much as possible. Save it for like the really important customers. Um, and when you do share, you just share the cover page, right? The title report. I'm not sure if you guys have separate attestation. Actually, there's three stages, right? So there's an attestation report, I'm sure, right? Where you just say that MainNerve conducted a pen test, right? And here's, and we just did the pen test. They don't even say the findings, for example, necessarily, right? Or you could take categories. And then another one, sharing the title page or the cover page of the report, or I guess the table of contents, where it has a list of, high, medium, and lows, right? But not necessarily the details of what was actually found. And then the third level of sharing is like sharing the full report. So, um, and then even prior to that, like say a company hasn't done a pen test. A lot of times I tell them, listen, customers would be okay if you have an engagement letter saying that you have a pen test scheduled for a month from now, because and this goes into like scheduling a pen test a little bit. I'm going to digress a little bit, but basically, uh, sometimes your app is not ready for a pen test, right? So you have a major version coming up. You know this, right? You have a major version coming up. I recommend waiting until that version is released so you can test a new version and not like waste a pen test on old code. So if there's an engagement letter established that a pen test is coming up, a customer can be happy with that. So I guess there's four levels: engagement letter of an upcoming pen test, attestation letter, where it just says that you did a pen test and this is the company that did it, and then the high level findings, just maybe type of findings, not necessarily the titles of the findings, and then maybe one with the titles, and then the full report as the, if they really ask. So what I recommend is sharing the least acceptable part, and then if they ask for the full report, especially if they're a customer, then go ahead and give it, but always under NDA. And if you haven't fixed the things, you better have a story on why you haven't fixed it or when you plan on fixing it.
That's right.
Um, you mentioned the letter where you're saying that we're going to have an engagement. Engagement's going to be in about a month or whatever. Have you seen that those types of letters are sufficient for clients that need to get compliance testing? Do you find that the auditors are okay with that being a valid statement? So that say that they're due for their annual. Unfortunately, their annual is going to cut off prior to the actual penetration test, but they've already engaged with an organization to say, we're going to do this, but we're going to wait until we flip over to the new code. Have you seen that as a viable solution, or do auditors tend to get a little bit more prickly?
Well, as with auditors, your mileage may vary depending on the auditor. But for the most part, if you have the engagement letter, it should suffice. And they'll be more relaxing on, say, your first year, say, SOC 2 audit, right? Your first year SOC 2 auditor can be a little more relaxed. But it really depends on the firm if they're really strict. And I don't want to even say strict, because with SOC 2 and your controls, it's up to you how to design it, right? So it could be that the auditor doesn't understand the right auditing practice, and that happens, right? And so they see everything as black and white, and they don't understand the nature of security, the security world, and pen testing and whatnot. So, but for the most part, I think an engagement letter does suffice for some auditors. Um, but if like so you're several years in on your audit, or maybe like PCI where it's more prescriptive and it's more like very specific, it might not suffice. For example, I've seen a 50-50 approach, really.
So, John, one of the things I'd like to lean into here a little bit is about the retesting. I think Eamon can hit pretty hard on that with this as well. We have clients that will come to us, and sometimes they'll be an informational or a low finding, and they'll come and ask questions. Hey, we plugged this up or whatever. Do they really need a retest at that point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I worked with a client once that was under pressure by a customer because a certain item wasn't fixed, and they wanted proof that that was fixed. And they, even though they fixed it, they wanted a third party attestation of it. And so they went to engage a whole new, brand new pen test. I'm like, you could just do a retest
Wow.
of just, yeah, exactly. See that your reaction there, right there, Reese, is yeah. uh, I'm like, you could just do a retest on like that thing, and a lot of providers provide a retest for free after 90 days or within 90 days, or maybe whatever it may be. And so you could just do a retest for that particular item, and it's going to be a fraction of the cost of a full on test. So yeah, to answer your question, a retest is of a particular item is way better than just getting a full on pen test. And depending on on the company, they could issue a new report or update the existing report with fixed in and then the date. But a lot of companies are looking for that third party attestation that this item was fixed.
For us, when we do the retest, we leave the original report as is, and we have a secondary test that shows the each finding, what the original details were regarding that finding, what the new status of the finding is, and then screenshots that support that, and we use it as an addendum to the original report.
Gotcha.
One of the
Yeah.
things that Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So say one of the things that I think I wanted to jump on top of what Reese was asking about. Sometimes you get, especially when you're dealing with the small businesses that don't have all the extra added support, you'll find that in our pen test report, they'll contain things that don't actually lead to a penetration, right? So the concept of a pen test report is if it doesn't lead to a penetration, it doesn't go in the report, right? But the clients that we deal with, they are smaller. They don't have a dedicated IT support or dedicated IT team, dedicated security team. So when we go through and we're performing the penetration test, those things that do lead to the penetration, they get up there, they're up in the highs. But we also add in smaller caveats. Like I'll give you a stupid example: is SSL3 is supported somewhere, or they're allowing for CBC type cipher in SSH or even in RDP, right? Um, d- it didn't lead us into a penetration, but it is a security concern that needs to be addressed. So we'll put it in the report to give them that added value. So sometimes, especially when it's that SSL or the TLS, they come back and they're like, "I want to retest for this," and I'm like, I mean, you don't really need one. Hang on one second. Yeah, it's fixed. You can go on your way." So that was one of the questions that, like, yes, we'd like to make money, but at the same time, I don't want to charge somebody, some stupid amount of money to for something they could hit a bone scan and see the same result, right? So in a situation like that, where a penetration test service, whether it's like MainNerve or whomever, has added those into a report, what kind of guidance would you give your clients when it comes to whether or not that should be retested by a third party or not?
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I guess mostly configuration items, best practices, things that could just be fixed, non-exploitable necessarily, or um, not non-exploitable, but security vulnerabilities versus like actual like application flaws. Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, I mean, you just I think you hit it right on the head. Like, don't these things don't need a pen test, right? It's a any sort of SSL scanner can pick this up. You could show a client or a customer that the configuration that this was fixed. Um, because sometimes the pen tester has they have access to source code and whatnot. So they're picking up other vulnerability scanning stuff. Um, yeah, that I mean, that doesn't need. I think you hit on the head right there. You don't need a full pen test for some of these configuration errors. And I don't know if end customers are going to ask for a lot of these questions, like a proof of this being fixed, versus like say an IDOR or I'm sorry, proof of this being tested by a third party, versus like more critical like XSS and IDOR and CSRF issues. You know what's interesting? What's interesting? You mentioned before, and this is what I was going to say before is, you talked about how you do your reports, and I find like it's interesting, like the variety of type, the way pen test companies have the reports. How did you guys come up with like your report methodology?
The reporting process for us, it morphed. So originally our reports were very bland and blank because we were getting a lot of people who had already had penetration tests done in the past coming to us to get their annual, and there was nothing in the report. So we were providing them with a report, and the report was basically the job. And then we would have clients come back later on going, "Hey, well, this other company, they found all of these other things, TLS, SSL." So basically, they were taking the vuln scan and they were just kind of attaching it to the report. And so we looked at a few reports that some of our clients would share with us, and there were like just thousands of things. And it was basically they had gone to an organization, the organization had performed their pen test, and included in that was every single item in a Nessus scan or Qualys scan, right? And so we thought about that, and we were like, well, there is value to this. We could attach it as a separate addendum, but then maybe the client doesn't really look at it because it's an Excel spreadsheet with findings in it, and they don't know what to do with it. So we just started adding those more critical ones into the report. We still attach, especially for an external pen test, we'll still attach a comma separated value file from our Nessus scan so that they can give that to their third party IT team if they have one or they have some way to get that vuln scan piece. And then we'll cherry pick some of the more I guess the the more popular vulnerabilities, like the ones that Nessus has decided this is now a critical, even though it's just SSL3, and unless you're a nation state, you're probably not going to exploit it. So we'll throw those in there so that the report has something in it. We've had clients that come back and say, our clients are nervous because there's nothing in this report. They've been told that if you get a report back and there's nothing in it, then your pen testers didn't do their job, right? Whereas the reverse could be true. I mean, it's true. The pen testers may not have done their job, but the reverse could be true that the client is doing their job and there's nothing to find. So we've started putting in those things that aren't related to um, penetration in order to give the client a little bit more value for the money.
And more of a demonstration that we performed the work we said we did.
It's a catch 22 because sometimes we get people saying, "Oh, it looks like all you did was a vault scan."
Yeah.
Well, we did do a vault scan, but that wasn't all we did. Um, it's just that what we did find was in the same stuff you could find in a vault scan, but it's been validated. I'll say that. So we don't grab something out of the vault scan and go, "Here you go, this is a problem," but they go back and they look at it and they're like, "Well, it's not actually a problem." So it's been validated that it actually exists before we give it to them. So no false positives end up in the main report through any fault of ours. There are false positives that show up in a report, but it's because we're not on the back end, so we don't fully understand exactly what's going on in their network. We only know what we can see. So we have to report on what we can see, and we don't realize that in the back end they've got something else that prevents whatever it is. or as one client decided they wanted to test us to see if we were actually doing our job. And so they went into the server header of all places in their application and changed it to a vulnerable version to see if we would report on it. And we did. We reported on it. So we passed their test, but at the same time, it's a false positive now.
Yeah. So one of the things that leads into a lot of this when we do compliance seems to be a major thing lately, whether it's HIPAA, PCI, CMMC, GDPR, or SOC 2. From your standpoint of being a fractional CISO, what would you say are the biggest fight out there right now for small companies?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Compliance is a big thing for small companies. I think there's a big a misunderstanding as far as like what compliance is. I mean, I'll have companies come to me and say, I want to get SOC 2, ISO, HIPAA, and CMM and FedRAMP or something within like 3 months or 6 months. I'm like, uh, okay, sure. Would you like a side of fries with that? Like, so. Uh, but once they have a framework, they realize that they do need a pen test, and so yeah, a pen test does come up when they do have to do SOC 2, say type 1 or type 2. More so type 2. You could get a pass on type 1 depending on the auditor, like we talked before. But um, yeah, some sort of like pen test, and in ISO, it's like a risk assessment. Um, so all the different frameworks have various requirements, and then you could try to um, wiggle around them. It's only the specific ones that are very prescriptive and say you must do a pen test. But also, it's expectations of your clients too as well. So
When you go about choosing a pen test provider, they got a long list of considerations, expertise, methodologies, certifications, budget being a big one. For a small organization that has limited resources, they don't have a dedicated IT team, they don't have a dedicated security team. How do you prioritize um, the the requirements for a pen test? And then when you approach a pen test provider, what are the factors you want to make sure that they're doing that fit within that requirement range, but still keep it down in the budget ways for your clients?
yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So I actually wrote a whole article on how to pick a pen test provider, and a lot of times it starts right from the beginning. So ask yourself why you're going for the pen test, but also, and then from there, kind of figure out what do you want pen tested. Do you want the whole company? Do you want just your web app, your mobile app, your API? What are we looking for from the pen test? And from there, you mentioned price, but honestly, I guess price is a factor, and it's an interesting factor. So if you go to like a big name pen test firm, it's going to be different than a smaller shop. And so uh, I think price, if we're going to talk about price, a lot of times I found price to be a factor of one is the type of company and like how I guess operationally efficient they are, and also how their resources are, where their resources are coming from. Are all their pen testers in San Francisco, for example, or are their pen testers in the Midwest, for example, or are there pen testers like overseas or nearshore, offshore, right? For example, um, because any company, right, the biggest cost is labor. But some companies add like project management on top and things like that. So that's that's the going to be the budget, I guess. How are you going to figure out what budget is going to be in the ballpark? But still, it doesn't mean that a high end pen tester is going to be higher quality, and it doesn't mean that a low end pen tester is going to be low quality, right? So I think we have to be careful about some of our biases as well. So it's also good to get referrals. So find out people what companies they used and how their experience. Because I think personally, not only is the pen test like the skills of the person, I'll get to that in a second, but also the experience of how working with the pen test, scheduling and all that kind of stuff. Are they organized, or are they just kind of like you just okay, pen test started and you don't hear from them in 2 weeks, and I hate that. Um, so um, so that's one thing. So how are they from a customer perspective? And then skills, right? So, does this company have any papers? Are they doing research? Are they allowing their pen testers to do research and give talks? Do they have stuff published? So, how technical is the company, or are they just a vulnerability scan uh, cover shop? So, and then from there, when you're engaging the company, when they send you a proposal, they should have um, the people that are going to be assigned to your pen test, and then profiles and bios of those people. So you can go ahead and look up their GitHub and their profiles and see if they've done any talks. Because a lot of times a company will sell you, like we have all these researchers and everything, and these are amazing, but then on the actual pen test, you get thrown some interns, and yeah, good luck with that. So, especially if it's the first time if I was a company, any company, and I'm engaging a client for the first time, I want to put like my best players on there, right? So to give them a good experience. Um, so in any case, so that's just a general ballpark. Not many companies list their clients, their logo, like have logos of who they've worked with, obviously from like a security privacy kind of thing. There are some that do, but again, your website matters, right? So you go to the website and you see like how about the company and some research and all the things I just mentioned before. Are the founders technical or are they not technical? Things like that. And yeah, and then just during the pen test, or I guess now when you get the scope of the project, how long it's going to be. Is it a 2 by 2, for example, 2 people for 2 weeks, or is it one person for 3 weeks? Depending like that. I like to have at least 2 people on the pen test. um, 2 by 2 is what I like to be a minimum, but I'm not sure how you guys do it. Um, I feel like one person. I feel like when you have 2 people, they can add variety and they could kind of go back and forth and help, and you get that like energy. Also, another factor in choosing a pen test firm is how is their reporting process, right? Are the actual pen testers writing the report, or do they just send it over to somewhere else to like write up the report for them? There's no right or wrong in that sense, but determining how big the shop is and how they write the reports. Also, this one's hard to tell, but is your pen tester dedicated to your project during the pen test? A lot of times they'll double up, and the pen tester is working on 2 different pen tests at the same time, and that's not cool, so you're getting half the value there. So there's no way to actually vet that and make sure that's true, but you do need to ask your account reps or the person you're talking to, is that something that they do, or at least see if they bring it up. Yeah, that's some factors in there. I think I covered most of the things from the article, but they can check out the article.
I think you hit it ahead of a lot of the things that MainNerve already does. I can tell you now, the if we have a web application and a network, and they're smaller web app, smaller network, we'll put 2 people on it. Put a one guy on the network side, one guy on the web app side. We are dedicated, like you were saying, the one project at a time. We have a technical writer as well. So once the report is written by the tester, it goes to our technical writer for validation. And then once the technical writer validates, they may have questions for the tester, and they go back and forth. So good information, though. I think it's really good for the SMB world to see that.
It's hard. It's hard. Picking a pen test provider is hard. It's I think people. One time a client came to me and is like, "Who do I pick? How do I pick? How do I know my customers are going to be okay with this pen test provider?" I'm like, "Well, it's kind of like it depends on who's on the other side." If it's an enterprise company, the compliance person doesn't know. Okay, I don't want to be general, but like sometimes the compliance person doesn't know. Uh, which all the pen test companies are. There's so many, right? It's very difficult, and so what they're going to do is go to the website and see if this is a legit company and everything be okay. There are some enterprise clients that want to see companies variate their pen test providers. They want to see them use, more brand name folks or like something like that. Some enterprises will actually conduct a pen test on an SMB if they want to use their product. They're like, we're just going to pay for the pen test and have it done on you. Are you okay with that? Of course, you do run. It's a small risk. Well, not the risk, but there is. People are sometimes uncomfortable with that because that means they get the access to the report first, right? Or at least access to the report the same time you do, and so you're definitely going to be under the gun to fix whatever those items are. Anyway, I digress. It's picking a pen test provider is hard.
It is, and what we found in the world too is that you'll get some guys that are really cheap, and our clients say, "Can you match that?" And we're just like, "No, we're not going to match it." And then they come back to us next year. Yeah, it was nothing but a vulnerability scan. They had a guy do an assessment on. I'm like, yeah, we told you that. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah, the same with my business, right? It's like I am not the cheapest person. I tell them I'm a white glove service, so I work with you and we get things done. But you're welcome to go to other less expensive solutions.
It's been fun having this conversation with you about penetration testing and fractional CISOs. How can people find more information about that and find you online?
Yeah, they could find me on my website, coffeewithayman.com. My and the newsletters out last week is at vciso.com. But everything is at coffeewithayman.com from there. They could find a bunch of things. And also LinkedIn, of course, too.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you,
it's
Do
sir.
you
been
have
a
a
Appreciate your
pleasure.
preferred
time.
coffee? You just say, do you have a preferred coffee?
Oh,
Ooh, yeah, I love single origin coffee. So, single origin, Ethiopia is and Kenya's. It used to be Kenya's and Ethiopia's. Although lately, Colombia has been producing some really good ones. I have a double anaerobic bag here, and it tastes phenomenal. Um, and so I've been brewing that lately on espresso and pour over. So,
Reese is writing those down
oh
right
yeah, I
now.
love coffee, so I'm gonna write stuff. I'm writing it down.
okay, okay,
I
yeah.
I'm not a connoisseur. I just drink my coffee black, and that's it. It doesn't matter. I very rarely send coffee back unless it's like really burnt. But I knew Reese was, he's all big into that
I'm a
stuff.
big coffee guy.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's why the new venture is called Security Cafe. So,
Nice.
um, and
Nice.
hopefully one day you'll have Security Cafe coffee beans.
Nice.
You can have that. You can have that plug.